Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Tonight, we begin with a gentle idea that is also a very strange one. A cat may rest in the same room you do, walk across the same floor, pause beside the same window, and yet experience that space in a very different way. What feels still to you may not feel still to a cat at all. What seems quiet may not be quiet. What looks familiar and ordinary may be full of signals, edges, movements, scents, and tiny changes that a cat notices at once. A human being leans heavily on sight, language, and clear detail. We tend to trust what we can look at directly and name. A cat is built around something a little different. Its senses are shaped for low light, faint sound, close movement, narrow spaces, and immediate change. Even inside a peaceful home, the body of a cat is still carrying the old design of a small hunter. That design shows up everywhere. A cat's eyes are large for the size of its head, which helps them gather more light. Its ears can turn to follow sound. Its whiskers are not just hairs, but sensitive tools that help it read nearby space. Its nose takes in layers of information that people often miss completely. Even the paws help test surfaces, pressure, texture, and vibration. So when a cat enters a room, it is not only seeing furniture and walls, it is reading a whole field of sensation. That is part of what makes cats seem so calm and so alert at the same time. A cat can look half asleep and still be taking in the faint shift of air near a doorway, the small scrape of movement from another room, or the scent left on a blanket hours earlier. Rest does not mean absence. Stillness does not mean nothing is happening. For a cat, the world keeps arriving, even in quiet. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find their way to this calm corner of the world, one sleepy traveler at a time. The quiet continues here, just as it is. The domestic cat may live with us now, but its sensory world was not built for couches and lamps and hallway rugs. It was shaped over a very long time by survival. House cats share much of their sensory equipment with wild ancestors that had to hunt small prey, move in dim light, and stay aware of danger close by. That history is still present in the body. It has not disappeared just because the setting changed. This is why a cat may stare at an empty corner, stop suddenly in a hallway, or become interested in something you cannot detect at all. The animal is not drifting into mystery for no reason. It is often responding to real information, just information arriving through systems that do not match your own. A small sound, a scent line, a flicker of movement, a change in pressure against the whiskers, a light level that feels workable to the cat, even though it feels dim to you. And once you begin to see that, the ordinary house starts to feel different. The sofa is no longer just a place to sleep. It holds texture, heat, scent, and height. The window is no longer just a view. It becomes light, motion, birdsong, air currents, and distant activity. Even the dark edge under a bed is not simply shadow. It is shelter, coolness, narrowness, and control. So before we even reach the details of vision, hearing, smell, balance, or touch, it helps to begin here. A cat is not moving through a smaller version of the human world. It is moving through its own sensory version of the same place. And that version is richer in some ways, dimmer in others, less detailed here, more sensitive there, but always active, always scanning, always alive with signals. That is the quiet world we will be entering tonight. To understand that world more clearly, it helps to step far back from the quiet room and remember what kind of life shaped the cat in the first place. Long before soft blankets, window perches, and bowls that fill at the same hour each day, cats survived by finding small prey that was quick, nervous, and easy to lose. Much of that prey moved low to the ground, vanished into cover in an instant, and became most active in the dim edges of the day, when light was weak, but movement still mattered. A hunter built for that kind of life would not be shaped to admire broad scenery or to linger over fine visual detail. It would be shaped to catch change early, to stay still at the right moment, and to act fast once a narrow opportunity appeared. That old pressure still lives quietly inside the modern cat. Cats are predators, but they were never built like the large pursuit hunters that chase with endurance across open land. They are small, close-range hunters. Their success depends less on power than on timing. A rustle in grass, a faint scratch under leaves, a brief movement near the edge of shadow. These are the kinds of signs that matter. By the time the signal becomes obvious, the chance may already be gone. So the body of a cat had to become very good at noticing what was subtle, local, and brief. That helps explain an important pattern that continues through nearly everything a cat does. Its senses are not arranged for broad comfort. They are arranged for decisions. Is something moving? How far away is it? Did that sound come from above, below, or behind? Is the space narrow or open? Is there cover nearby? Is it safer to advance, wait, or disappear? These are not slow questions. They are immediate ones. The cat sensory world is built around them. And there is another layer to this. Cats evolved not only as hunters, but as relatively small hunters. That matters. A small predator may be skilled, but it is not beyond danger. Larger carnivores, birds of prey, and other threats could still turn the hunter into something hunted. So cats benefited from an unusual balance. They needed sharp stalking ability, but they also needed defensive awareness. They had to move forward, but not carelessly. They had to focus, but without going blind to the space around them. That combination helps explain something people often notice, without fully naming. Cats can seem deeply relaxed and deeply alert at the same time. A cat resting on the floor may look almost loose with sleep, yet the ears still turn. The eyes may open at the softest shift in the room. The body may remain still while the senses continue working. That is not a contradiction. It is the result of an animal shaped by both pursuit and caution. The same body that is ready to stalk a small animal also benefits from being able to catch danger early and avoid exposure. This is why cat senses often seem tuned to the near world. Humans are very good at certain kinds of long-distance detail. We like stable light, fixed focus, labels, and clear visual recognition. Cats are working with different priorities. For them, what matters most is often close by. The edge of a table, the base of a wall, the space beneath a chair, the path between two objects, the small motion at ground level. The room is not just a large open picture. It is a field of immediate possibilities and risks. Even inside a home, those priorities do not disappear. The setting changes, but the deeper design remains. The toy dragged across a rug, the soft footstep in another room, the bird outside the window, the unfamiliar scent on a bag placed near the door. All of these tap into systems much older than domestic life. The couch may be modern, the apartment may be modern, the heating vent, the lamp, the hallway carpet, all of that is recent by comparison. But the sensory logic moving through the cat is ancient. And once that hunting history is in place, the eyes begin to make sense in a much more specific way. A great deal of that history can be seen in the eyes themselves. Cat eyes are large for the size of the head, and that is not a small detail. Large eyes can gather more light, which becomes especially useful for an animal that has long depended on the dim hours of early morning, late evening, and shadowed spaces in between. When the world is not brightly lit, every bit of available light matters. Bigger eyes help capture more of it. That large-eyed look gives cats part of their familiar expression, but it also tells us something mechanical and practical. The eye is not just there to make a broad, beautiful picture. It is there to gather enough visual information to support quick choices. A slight movement near the floor, the edge of an opening, the distance to a landing place, the exact point where a body should stay still, then move. The placement of the eyes matters too. A cat's eyes face forward rather than out to the sides. That forward placement creates overlap between what each eye sees, and that overlap helps with depth judgment. In simple terms, both eyes are helping to judge how far away something is. For a cat, that has obvious value. A jump has to be measured well. A pounce has to land in the right place. A narrow ledge, the top of a chair, the back of a sofa. All of these require good near-range distance reading. A mistake at the wrong moment could mean a missed meal, an awkward fall, or unnecessary noise. This is one reason cats can look so steady when they focus. Their gaze is often not passive at all. It is measuring. Even when the body is still, the eyes may be working through position, distance, and timing. What looks to us like a quiet stare may be a very active calculation. At the same time, the cat eye is not built to do everything equally well. Human eyes are excellent at certain kinds of sharp daytime detail. We read small letters, recognize faces at a distance, and pick up fine visual texture in bright conditions. Cats are not built around those same strengths. Their vision is more specialized. It gives up some crispness and some color richness in exchange for better usefulness under harder conditions. In other words, the cat eye is less concerned with making the world look detailed at noon, and more concerned with making the world stay usable when light is low and decisions must still be made. Even the shape and scale of the eye suggest that trade-off. Large eyes, set forward, built to admit and manage light, point to a system that values sensitivity and timing. They help the cat notice enough, soon enough, to act. That is often more important than seeing every surface in perfect detail. A hunter of small prey does not need to admire the scene. It needs to know where movement happened and how far away the target is. There is something else quietly important here as well. Because the eyes are so central to close-range judgment, they work as part of a larger movement system, Vision is feeding the body. The eyes help decide where the paws will go, how the spine will shift, whether the head should lower, and whether the body should commit to action or wait a little longer. The eye does not work alone. It helps guide the whole animal. This is why a cat moving through a room can seem both smooth and precise. The eyes are not only watching the room in a general way, they are helping organize approach, pause, turn, and landing. The table edge is not just seen, it is measured. The jump is not just attempted, it is judged. The shadow under the bed is not just dark, it is read as a possible space with depth, cover, and margin. All of that begins with the way the eyes are built before a single movement even happens. Their size, their placement, and their priorities reveal a system shaped by survival in dim, uncertain environments, where a little more light and a little better depth sense could make a meaningful difference. But the real advantage of those large eyes only becomes clear once the light begins to fall. That is where one of the cat's clearest advantages begins to appear. The retina, the light-sensitive layer at the back of the eye, contains two main kinds of cells that help with vision. Cone cells are better for color and sharp detail in brighter light. Rod cells are much more useful in dim light and are especially good at detecting motion. Cats have a retina that leans much more heavily toward rods than ours does. That matters because it changes what kind of visual world the eye is built to serve. A human eye, under good daylight, can pull out fine texture, rich color, and small detail with great clarity. A cat eye, by comparison, is more willing to trade some of that away if it means staying useful when the light grows weak. In the fading light of evening, or in a room lit only by a distant lamp, that trade begins to pay off. The shapes may not be as crisp in the human sense, but the scene does not disappear nearly as quickly for the cat. Motion can still be caught. Contrast can still be used. The world remains workable. This is why dawn and dusk suit the cat so well. These are the hours when many small animals begin to move, and also the hours when light is no longer simple. Long shadows break up the ground. Edges soften. Bright color matters less. In those conditions, a visual system that can keep functioning with very little light becomes extremely valuable. The cat is not waiting for the full sun. It is ready before that, and it does not lose nearly as much when the day begins to dim. The pupils help with this too. In low light, they can open very wide, allowing more light to enter the eye. This gives the cat another important advantage. When a room looks shadowy to us, the cat may still be taking in a surprising amount of usable information. A hallway at night, the floor beneath a chair, the dim corner beside a bed. These places may feel uncertain to a human eye, but not necessarily to a cat. Not because the cat sees some magical version of darkness, but because it is better built to use the small amount of light that is still there. That distinction matters. Cats do not see in total darkness. If there is no light at all, there is no image to form. But they need far less light than we do. That is different from seeing in darkness itself. It is more accurate, and in some ways more interesting, because it shows how much of the cat's world depends on making the most of what is barely available. A few faint reflections, a low glow from another room, moonlight through a window, light leaking under a door. For us, these may feel like traces, For a cat, they can be enough to keep the space visually alive. And when you begin to think of it that way, ordinary scenes start to change. A quiet home at night is not one flat block of darkness. It becomes a map of uneven light. The window holds one level of brightness. The floor near the hallway holds another. The table leg casts a shape. The open doorway carries a softer outline. To us, these differences may feel too slight to matter much. To a cat, they may be more than enough to guide movement, support caution, and hold attention. This also helps explain those familiar moments when a cat seems completely comfortable in places that look almost black to us. It slips through the room without hesitation, pauses at the edge of a doorway, looks into a corner that seems empty, then continues on with quiet certainty. The cat is not simply guessing. Its eyes are still working in conditions where ours are beginning to fail. And yet, even this low light advantage is only part of the story. The rods help, the wide pupils help, the large eyes help. But the cat's vision does not rely only on getting more light into the eye. It also depends on what happens once that light has already entered. And even that is not the whole story, because the cat's eye does something with light after it enters that our eyes do not. Behind the retina sits a thin reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum. The name sounds old and almost ceremonial, but its job is simple and very useful. When light enters the eye and passes through the retina, not all of it is caught on the first pass. In a human eye, much of that unused light is simply lost. In a cat's eye, the tapetum reflects some of that light back through the retina again. It gives the eye another chance to detect what was already there. That second chance matters most when light is scarce. In bright daylight, there is already plenty of light to work with. But in the low, uncertain light that suited the cat's long history, every small bit mattered. A dim outline, a flick at ground level, a shift near the base of a wall. These could become easier to catch if the eye could make better use of faint light instead of letting it go. This is why cat eyes can appear to glow at night. The glow is not light coming out of the eye on its own. It is reflected light, bouncing back from that layer behind the retina. When a car headlight, flashlight, or camera flash hits the eyes of a cat, the reflection becomes visible to us. It may look green, yellow, or sometimes blue-green, depending on the angle, the light, and the structures inside the eye. What looks mysterious from across a dark room is really the visible sign of a low-light tool doing exactly what it was built to do. And once you know that, the glowing eyes of a cat stop feeling like a trick of darkness and start to feel like a clue. They reveal that the cat eye is not only large and light-sensitive. It is also trying not to waste what little light reaches it. The whole system is designed with thrift in mind, taking faint visual input and stretching its usefulness as far as possible. But there is a trade-off hidden inside that clever design. When light is reflected back through the retina, it becomes more available, but it also becomes a little less clean. It can scatter, it can soften edges, it can reduce visual sharpness. So the same feature that helps a cat function better in dim settings also means the image may not be as crisp as the image formed in an eye built more for precision in bright light. The gain is sensitivity. The cost is detail. That matters because it keeps us from thinking of the cat eye as simply better than the human eye. It is not better in every way. It is better at some tasks and less suited to others. A human standing in bright daylight may see fine detail more clearly. A cat moving through a dim room may hold on to useful visual information much longer. Each eye reflects the needs of the animal it belongs to. This is true of so many parts of the cat. The body is not trying to create the richest possible picture of the world in every condition. It is trying to create a useful one in the conditions that mattered most. Enough light to move, enough contrast to notice change, enough depth to judge distance, enough accuracy to decide whether to hold still or act. That is why the image a cat sees may be softer than ours in some ways, but still more valuable to the cat in that moment. If the world is dim and uncertain, a softer image that still preserves movement and position may be far more helpful than a sharper image that fades too quickly to use. A small hunter does not need every blade of grass in perfect focus. It needs to know where the movement happened and whether the body should respond. So the glow of cat eyes is more than a nighttime curiosity. It is a sign of the bargain the cat eye has made. It takes less perfect visual precision in exchange for more surviving light. It accepts some blur in order to keep the world present a little longer. And once that trade-off is clear, another question begins to rise very naturally. If cats are willing to give up some detail in order to gain more usable light, then perhaps detail was never the most important thing their eyes were meant to protect. The next question becomes, what visual information matters most to them? That begins to explain one of the most important truths about cat vision. For a cat, movement often matters more than detail. Not movement in a broad, dramatic sense, but the smallest kinds. A twitch in grass, a quick flick beneath a chair, the faint shift of something passing along the edge of a wall. These are the kinds of signals that would have mattered again and again across the long history of a small hunter. The eye did not need to build a perfect still image of the whole world at once. It needed to catch the part of the world that had just changed. This is one of the clearest differences between human vision and feline vision. Human beings are very good at reading static information. We can study a still face, read printed letters, notice fine texture in fabric, and take in visual detail from objects that are not moving at all. Much of human life depends on that strength. We read signs, we study screens, we recognize symbols, we look closely at surfaces and names and shapes that remain still long enough to inspect. A cat lives with different priorities. Its visual system is more biased toward noticing motion, especially motion that is quick, slight, and a little uneven. That kind of movement is often the most useful clue in the world of a cat. Small prey does not usually sit out in the open and wait to be seen clearly. It appears briefly, moves in a broken pattern, then vanishes. So the eye that responds quickly to change may be far more valuable than an eye that sees every still detail in perfect sharpness. This helps explain a familiar and sometimes funny moment in daily life. A toy may lie on the floor for several minutes and mean almost nothing to a cat. Then the moment it shifts, even by a small amount, the whole body changes. The eyes fix, the ears aim forward, the muscles gather. What was unimportant a second earlier now becomes worthy of complete attention. The object itself did not change very much. What changed was the signal it gave. It moved. The same thing can happen with shadows, loose fabric, falling dust, or a narrow line of light crossing the floor. A cat may ignore the object that created the movement and focus instead on the movement itself. That can seem odd to us because humans often care more about what a thing is. A cat, in that moment, may care first that it moved at all. In practical terms, this means a cat often reads a room less like a photograph and more like a field of moving signals. The room is not only walls, chairs, towels, blankets, and doors. It is also the shifting edge of a curtain in air from a vent, the tiny dark shape of an insect near the window, the passing reflection from a car outside, the brief crossing of a foot in the hall. Motion gives priority. Motion lifts one part of the room above the rest. This does not mean cats cannot see still things. Of course they can. But stillness does not always hold the same weight for them that it does for us. A person may walk into a room and notice the arrangement, the colors, the objects, the visual order of the space. A cat may enter and notice first what changed since the last visit, what moved, what appeared, what is no longer where it was. The room is alive through difference, and that may be one reason cats can seem so suddenly alert. The shift from calm to attention can happen in an instant, because the visual system is already prepared to privilege change. Stillness does not necessarily switch the senses off. It simply means nothing important has moved yet. The moment something does, the body can answer very quickly. This way of seeing also matches the rest of the cat's design. A hunter that waits, watches, and commits only when the right signal appears does not need every part of the world to be equally vivid at all times. It needs the right part to rise sharply when it matters. Movement provides that rise. Movement says, "This may be worth following." Movement says, "Pay attention now." And once motion becomes the priority, color and clarity start to matter in a very different way. If motion matters more, then color does not need to matter in quite the same way it matters to us. Human beings live inside a world that often feels rich with color. We sort, compare, decorate, signal, and remember through color all the time. We notice the deep red of fabric, the brightness of fruit, the difference between gold and orange, blue and violet, warm white and cool white. Our visual system gives a great deal of space to that kind of distinction. A cat appears to live inside a simpler color world. Researchers believe cats do see color, but not with the same range or richness humans do. Their vision is often described as being more limited, especially in red-rich parts of the spectrum. Colors that seem very different to us may not separate so strongly for them. The world may appear more muted, more washed into cooler and softer tones, with fewer sharp color divisions standing apart from one another. That does not mean the world is dull to a cat. It means color is not being given the same priority. Once again, the pattern is familiar. The cat eye is not built to celebrate every part of the image equally. It is built to keep the most useful parts available. Contrast matters. Motion matters. Light level matters. Position matters. Color, while still present, may simply matter less. There is a similar trade in distance. Under good daylight conditions, humans are generally better at seeing sharp detail at longer ranges. A person can often make out fine edges, clear outlines, and stable shapes from far across a room or across an open outdoor space. A cat is different. Its long-range clarity is not as strong. What is far away may not resolve with the same clean precision it would for us. The cat's visual world seems more optimized for nearer distances, where movement, timing, and action become immediate. This fits beautifully with the rest of the animal. A cat does not usually need to study the horizon in fine detail. It needs to judge what is happening close enough to matter. The path to the chair, the jump to the counter, the small body moving near the floor, the opening beneath the table. What counts is often within a shorter, more active range. The eye is serving that range first. So the cat's world may look less saturated and less sharply detailed than ours in many situations, even while still being highly useful. This is an important idea because people often imagine that animal senses must always be stronger than our own in some general way, as though the cat simply has a more powerful version of vision. But that is not really how it works. Cats are not seeing a brighter, richer, clearer version of everything. They are seeing a version of the world filtered toward what their lives required. In some ways, that version leaves things out. But what it leaves out helps strengthen something else. When an eye gives less effort to fine daytime detail and broad color richness, it can support better performance in dimmer settings and greater usefulness around motion. The sacrifice makes sense if the world that shaped the animal was one of twilight, hiding places, quick reactions, and very local decisions. It may also explain why cats can seem uninterested in objects that humans find visually obvious. A bright red toy may stand out powerfully to us because of its color. To a cat, that same toy may not become truly important until it moves. A distant object may be easy for us to study from across the room, while a cat may care much more once it enters a closer and more active range. The cat is not missing the world. It is ranking it differently, and there is something strangely elegant about that. The visual world of a cat may be less full in some of the ways we most value, yet more efficient in the ways that mattered to a small hunter living close to the ground. The image may carry less color and less far-off sharpness, but more immediate usefulness, where the body must act. That same trade can even be seen in the changing face of the eye itself. Because once color, distance, and detail are no longer the highest priorities, the eye becomes freer to do something else very well. It can become an instrument for managing light from one second to the next, opening wide when it must, and narrowing fast when it should. And that trade-off becomes even more visible when you look at how the pupil itself behaves from one moment to the next. The pupil of a cat is one of the clearest signs that the eye is built to adapt quickly. In bright light, that dark opening can narrow into a very thin vertical slit. In dim light, it can widen until the eye looks almost entirely dark. This change can happen with striking speed, and it allows the cat to regulate incoming light with a high level of control. For an animal that may move between sunlit windows, dark corners, open hallways, and shaded furniture in just a few steps, that flexibility is deeply useful. Humans have round pupils, and they grow larger and smaller too. But the vertical slit of a cat works differently. It can close down very tightly, helping protect the light-sensitive eye from being overwhelmed during the day, then open dramatically when brightness falls. This gives the cat an unusually wide operating range. The same eyes that can function in low evening light can also keep working in bright daylight without losing too much control. That shape may do more than manage brightness. Researchers have suggested that vertical slit pupils can also help with judging distance, especially at the shorter ranges that matter most to a stalking animal. For a small hunter, the most important distance is often not the far horizon. It is the distance between the body and the exact place where the paws or jaws must land. The closer the movement, the more exact the judgment has to be. A system that helps measure those near distances well would be a real advantage. This fits with everything else we have seen so far. The cat eye is not arranged for broad visual pleasure. It is arranged for useful control. Light must be admitted or reduced quickly. Distances must be judged at the ranges that support stalking, pouncing, climbing, and landing. The eye is constantly balancing protection and access, keeping just enough light, just enough contrast, just enough spatial guidance to let the body act well. And because the pupil is visible, we can actually watch some of this happening. A cat near a bright window may have pupils narrowed down to thin, dark lines. The same cat later, in a dim room, may have pupils that widen so much the colored part of the eye becomes hard to see. It is one of the most dramatic changes in the face of the animal, and it reflects a constant conversation between body and environment. The eye is not fixed. It is responding all the time. What makes this even more interesting is that pupil size does not change only because of light. It can also shift with arousal, alertness, fear, excitement, and strong attention. A cat that is playing, startled, focused, or suddenly energized may show widened pupils, even when the room itself has not changed much. In that moment, the eye is responding not only to brightness, but to the cat's internal state. The body is saying something important may be happening, and the visual system begins to adjust around that readiness. So the pupil becomes more than a light valve. It becomes part of the visible language of preparation. A widened pupil can mean the room is dim, but it can also mean the cat is keyed up, interested, uncertain, or ready to react. A narrowed pupil may reflect brightness, but depending on the whole body, it may also sit inside a very focused and controlled state. The eyes are telling us something about both the outside world and the body reading it. This is part of why the cat eye feels so alive. It is not merely receiving an image from the world like a passive camera. It is reshaping itself from moment to moment, according to changing light, changing movement, and changing levels of readiness inside the cat itself. The eye is not separate from the rest of the body. It is woven into posture, tension, attention, and action. And that helps explain the feeling people often have when watching a cat that has suddenly become very still. The body seems quiet, but the eyes have changed. The pupils may be larger, the gaze may tighten, the head may angle very slightly. There is a sense that the animal has crossed from resting into active sensing, even before it moves. The stillness is not empty. It is charged. the eye has already adjusted for what may come next. By now, it becomes clear that vision in a cat is a highly dynamic system. The size of the pupil, the handling of light, the depth of the gaze, and the readiness of the body are all connected. The eye is constantly adjusting to the room, but also to the cat's own level of alertness within that room. It is one more example of the same rule we have been following all along. The cat is built not for one fixed picture of the world, but for a world that changes second by second and asks for quick local decisions. But even vision does not explain the stillness of a cat that suddenly freezes and listens, because sound opens another layer of the room entirely. It is true that sound opens the room in a different way. Light depends on direction, angle, contrast, and surface. Sound moves around corners. It slips beneath doors. It travels through floors, walls, pipes, fabric, and air. A room that looks still can still be full of small acoustic events, and for a cat, that hidden layer matters a great deal. Humans hear a broad and useful range of sound, but a cat reaches much higher. Human hearing usually tops out around 20 kilohertz, at least in youth, and often much less as people age. Cats can hear far beyond that, often into the 60 kilohertz range. That is a remarkable difference. It means there are sounds at the upper edge of a cat's hearing that simply do not exist in ordinary human experience at all. We do not notice them, not because we are distracted, but because they never arrive for us as sound in the first place. That higher range is not random. It fits the same old pattern. Small prey animals, especially rodents, can make very high sounds, including squeaks and soft movements that rise well above the range humans use in everyday life. A cat built to catch small prey would benefit enormously from being able to detect those signals. A faint scrape behind a wall, a tiny movement in dry leaves, a small body shifting in darkness. For the cat, these are not trivial sounds. They may be the first sign that something living is present. This is why hearing can matter even when sight tells almost nothing. A floor may look empty. A corner may look quiet. A patch of grass may appear still. But sound can reveal what vision has not found yet. A cat that suddenly lifts its head and fixes its body may be responding to something far more exact than a vague feeling. It may be catching a real acoustic event, one so slight or so high that no human ear nearby would ever notice it. That gives the home a second shape. To us, a house may seem quiet once the talking stops and the screens go dark. To a cat, the house may still be carrying a low, ongoing life of sound. The tiny click of cooling metal, the hum of electricity, the scratch of movement inside a wall, the shift of fabric as air from a vent touches a curtain, the distant movement of a person in another room, the brief rattle of a loose object, a small insect at the window. Even if none of these rise fully into the center of the cat's attention, they still contribute to a richer acoustic world than the one we usually notice. This may be one reason cats can seem suddenly awake in moments that feel completely uneventful to us. We sit in what we call silence, while the cat turns its head toward a point in the room that appears empty. From the human side, it can feel mysterious. From the cat's side, it may be perfectly plain. Something happened there. Something made a sound. And just as with vision, The point is not that the cat receives a grander or more beautiful version of everything. The point is that its hearing is tuned towards signals that matter to the life of a small, cautious hunter. Very high frequencies matter. Tiny, local sounds matter. Brief, irregular noises matter. Long speeches, music, and language matter less in the old biological sense, even though house cats now live among those things all the time. There is also something gentle and almost strange in the fact that sound reaches the cat before we know there is anything to hear. A mouse in the wall may begin as a faint series of taps. A bird outside may make a thin sound before it crosses into view. A person approaching from down the hall may be known first by steps, clothing, pressure on the floorboards, or the soft change in the air that movement can create. The room does not have to show itself all at once. It can announce itself in fragments. That means a cat often lives at the edge of events before we do. The eyes may still be resting. The body may still be quiet. But the ears have already opened a new map. Something is happening beyond the doorway, behind the furniture, under the floor, outside the window, or somewhere just beyond the part of the room that vision is using most strongly at that moment. Hearing extends the reach of the animal without requiring movement first. And once those sounds exist, the next problem is not just hearing them, but locating them with extreme precision. That is why the ears themselves are so remarkable. A cat's outer ears, the upright parts we can see so clearly, are not fixed in place the way many human features are. They are large, mobile, and controlled by a surprising number of small muscles. A cat has more than 30 muscles helping move the ears, which gives each ear a wide range of motion. In many cats, the ears can rotate to an angle of roughly 180 degrees. That is an extraordinary amount of control for such a small part of the body, and it turns the head into something like a living sound instrument. Because the ears can move independently, a cat does not always need to turn the whole head to gather new information. One ear may angle toward a faint sound near the window, while the other remains partly tuned to the hallway. A second later, both may shift slightly forward. Then one may tilt back again. These changes can be so small and so fast that they are easy to miss unless you are looking closely. But they are happening all the time. The cat is not simply hearing sound in a passive way. It is sampling the room. That independent movement matters because sound is rarely neat. A real room is full of overlapping noise. Air moves through vents. Fabric brushes against wood. A person shifts in another space. A bird calls outside. A distant car passes. Somewhere beneath all of that may be a much smaller sound that the cat actually wants to study. If the ears were fixed, much more of that sound would blur together. But because each ear can be aimed, the cat can begin to separate one signal from another. In that sense, the ears are doing a kind of selection before the rest of the body even reacts. They help decide what deserves the next layer of attention. This is one reason the familiar image of a cat turning just its ears before turning its head is so meaningful. It is not random. It is a visible sign that the cat has already begun analyzing the sound field. The body has not committed yet. The ears go first. There is something beautifully economical about that. Turning the whole head or body creates movement. Movement can reveal the animal, change the sound environment, or waste energy. But turning the ears is small and quiet. It lets the cat investigate without exposing too much. The room can be tested with almost no disturbance at all. This matches the rest of the cat's design very closely. The animal is built for low-noise information gathering, for checking first and moving second. It also helps explain why cats can look so suddenly intent, even when they remain outwardly still. The paws stay where they are. The shoulders remain soft. The tail may not move. Yet the ears begin to swivel with careful precision. To us, the cat seems barely changed. But from inside the cat's sensory world, a great deal may be happening. The room has split into directions. Certain sounds have been elevated. Others have fallen back. The ears are narrowing the question. That question is not only what made the sound, it is also where exactly did it come from. A hunter does not gain much from knowing only that something moves somewhere. The useful problem is spatial. Was it above or below? Near the wall or away from it? Behind the object or beside it? Advancing or retreating? The ear movements help prepare those answers by changing how sound enters the head from moment to moment. This is why the shape of the outer ear matters too. The upright ear helps collect and funnel sound inward, and its position changes how certain sounds are received. When the ears shift, the sound profile changes slightly. A noise that is faint from one angle may become clearer from another. A competing noise may weaken as the ear turns away from it. Over and over, the cat is adjusting the receivers, not once, but continuously. And because each ear can be adjusted on its own, the cat can compare the world in stereo with extraordinary care. The room is not a flat wash of noise. It becomes directional and layered. One side holds more signal. One side carries a slightly earlier arrival. One angle sharpens the sound while another softens it. These differences are tiny, but they matter. The cat is built to notice them. You can sometimes see the entire sequence unfold in a few quiet seconds. The ears tilt, then they hold. Then one rotates a little farther. The eyes sharpen. The head follows only after the ears have done their work. It is almost as if the cat is drawing invisible lines through the air, narrowing the location before the gaze confirms it. The body stays patient because patience is part of precision. But rotating the ears only matters because the cat is using those tiny differences to solve a spatial problem in real time. A sound reaching the ears is only the beginning. For the cat, the real question is where that sound came from. Not in a vague way, not simply left or right, but with enough accuracy to make the next decision useful. If something moved behind a chair, under a cabinet, inside tall grass, or along the base of a wall, the cat needs more than awareness. It needs location. That is why the two ears matter together. A sound does not reach both ears in exactly the same way. If a noise comes from one side, it will usually arrive at the nearer ear just a fraction of a moment sooner, and it may also sound slightly stronger there. These differences are tiny, far too small for us to notice consciously, but to the cat, they are valuable. By comparing those slight shifts in timing and intensity, the auditory system can begin to estimate direction with remarkable precision. This is one of the reasons cats can seem so exact when they listen. The head may remain almost perfectly still. The ears may tilt only a little. Yet inside that stillness, the sound is being measured. The room is no longer just full of noise. It becomes directional. One side receives the sound first. One side receives it more strongly. The difference may be slight, but slight is enough. For a small hunter, this matters enormously. Prey does not always present itself in the open. It may be hidden under leaves, behind a table leg, beneath furniture, or inside a wall where vision cannot help yet. A brief rustle is not just a sound to a cat. It is a point in space. It is a height above the floor, a direction from the body, a possible distance, and sometimes even the beginning of a movement path. The sound says, not only something is there, it says where. This is why a cat can appear to stare at empty space with such intensity. From the human side, there may be nothing visible at all, but the cat is not staring into nothing. It may be listening toward a location that has already formed in the body as something real. A sound behind a baseboard, a soft step in the next room, a tiny scrape near the window. Once the cat has enough acoustic information, the gaze follows it. In that sense, hearing becomes a kind of invisible mapping. The ears gather direction, the head refines it, the body holds still while the room becomes spatially clearer. This is more than simple hearing. It is the building of a three-dimensional picture from sound alone. An event that cannot yet be seen still gains shape. The cat begins to know whether it is above or below, close or far, hidden or emerging. And because many useful sounds are brief, this mapping often has to happen quickly. A small animal may move only once, then freeze. A light object may rattle and fall silent. A person may shift in another room and stop again. The cat cannot wait for a long explanation. It has to use the first signal well. This is why even a very short noise can produce such a sudden and focused change in posture. The cat is not reacting to the noise as noise. It is reacting to the location contained inside it. This also helps explain the sequence we often see. First, the ears turn. Then they hold. Then the head follows. The eyes narrow onto a point. Sometimes the body stays frozen for several seconds, as if waiting for the room to speak again. That waiting is part of the process. The first sound gives a probable location. The next sound, if it comes, can confirm it, refine it, or reveal motion away from it. The cat is building accuracy in layers. There is something deeply practical in the way this works. A room does not need to reveal everything at once. A single small sound can be enough to begin narrowing the world. A second sound can strengthen the outline. A third may show a path. Little by little, the invisible becomes organized. The cat may still not see the source, but it no longer has to treat the space as empty. It now contains a likely point of interest. And once a point like that exists, the whole room changes around it. Distances become important. Cover becomes important. Silence becomes important. The cat may lower its body, shift its weight, or simply continue listening. It has moved from broad awareness into targeted attention. Sound has transformed into place, but even that has limits. Sound is excellent at announcing movement while movement is happening. It can reveal where something is right now, or where it was a second ago. Yet once the motion stops and the room goes still again, sound fades with it. The space remains, but the signal is gone. Another sense has to take over if the cat is going to keep reading that place after the noise has ended. And yet, even sound does not explain how a cat keeps track of places long after the movement stops, because scent stores information in a different way. That is also where sound reaches a quiet limit. A noise can reveal where something is for a moment. It can sketch direction, distance, and movement, while that movement is still happening. But once the rustle stops, once the tiny scratch fades, once the room falls still again, hearing loses its hold. Sound is immediate, but it does not linger very long. And for an animal moving through the same spaces again and again, another sense becomes important for a different reason. It does not just detect what is happening now. It helps preserve what happened before. That is one of the deeper roles of smell. Human beings often treat smell as a background sense. We notice it when it is strong, pleasant, unpleasant, sudden, or strange. But much of the time we move through the world, led mainly by sight and thought. A room feels known to us because it looks familiar. A person feels familiar because we recognize the face, the voice, the shape, the name. For a cat, familiarity is organized in a different way. Smell is one of the main tools for reading identity, safety, routine, and territorial history. It helps tell the cat not only what something is, but whether it belongs here, whether it has been here before, and whether the space still feels settled. This means a room is never blank to a cat, even when nothing visible is changing. The air, the furniture, the floor, the doorway, the blanket, the shoes near the wall, all of these may hold scent traces. Some belong to people. Some belong to other animals. Some belong to food, fabric, dust, the outside air, or the cat itself. A place that looks still and ordinary to us may already be full of information for a cat before the eyes or ears have finished their work. And unlike sound, scent can remain after the event is gone. A person may leave the room, but the room may continue to say that the person was here. Another animal may have crossed the hall earlier, and the cat can still read the trace of that crossing. Food may have been prepared an hour ago. A package may have come in from outside. A blanket may carry the scent of where it was last used. The room is not only what is present now, it is also what has recently happened there. That gives smell a different kind of power. It turns space into memory. The cat does not only ask what is in front of me, it also asks in its own sensory way, what has this place been? Is this the usual smell of this chair? Is that familiar person's scent still on the cushion? Has something unknown entered the doorway? Has another animal passed by? Has the usual pattern shifted? Smell helps answer those questions without requiring direct sight or sound in the moment. This is one reason cats can seem so interested in places more than objects. A person may notice the new object on the table. A cat may go first to the path near the door, the corner of the bag, the edge of the sofa, the place where the new thing passed through the room before it came to rest. The scent history around the event may matter as much as the event itself. To the cat, meaning often spreads outward from traces. That is also why routine matters so much. Repeated routines create stable scent patterns. Certain places begin to smell the way they are supposed to smell. The bed smells like rest. The feeding area smells like meals and familiar approach. A person's chair smells like that person. A favorite blanket smells like body warmth, fur, and settled repetition. These patterns help make a home feel knowable. They turn space into something more than geometry. They turn it into territory, comfort, and predictability. And when those patterns shift, the change may be deeply noticeable, even if no human eye would mark it as important. A visitor brings in outside air, an unfamiliar trace. A moved object leaves a changed scent path. Laundry returns from elsewhere with a different chemical profile. Another animal appears at the door. The cat may react not because the scene looks dramatic, but because the chemical map of the room is no longer exactly the same. This is what makes smell such a hidden form of order. It does not stand out to us the way light does. It does not announce itself the way sound does. But for a cat, it helps organize the meaning of the entire space. A room is not just walls and surfaces. It is a layered chemical record, constantly refreshed, slowly fading, quietly rewritten by every body that moves through it. And that chemical record becomes even more interesting once we realize cats are not relying on just one scent system. There is the main olfactory system, the ordinary pathway through the nose that most people think of when they think about smell. Air moves in, scent molecules bind to receptors, and the brain begins sorting what is present in the environment. Cats are very good at that form of smelling already. Their noses are far more important to daily life than many people realize. But alongside that familiar system, cats also have something else. They have a second chemical sensing structure called the vomeronasal organ, sometimes called Jacobson's organ. This organ sits in the roof of the mouth, just behind the front teeth, and it helps cats detect certain kinds of chemical information in a more specialized way. It is especially useful for social and biological cues, many of them tied to other animals. In simple terms, the cat is not only smelling that something is present. It may also be sorting what kind of presence it is, how recent it is, whether it belongs to a known animal, and whether that information matters in a social or territorial way. This helps explain a behavior that can look odd if you do not know what is happening. Sometimes a cat will pause after investigating a scent, lift the head slightly, and hold the mouth partly open for a moment with a strange fixed expression. It can look almost like surprise, or like the cat has forgotten what its face is doing. But it is not random at all. This is a form of deeper scent analysis. The cat is helping move chemical information toward the vomeronasal organ, giving the body access to a richer category of scent than the main nose alone provides. So when a cat makes that open mouth face after smelling a shoe, a doorway, another animal, or a patch of ground, it is not simply smelling more strongly in the ordinary sense. It is investigating in a different way. The body is trying to classify the scent. It is pulling out information that humans do not consciously detect from the same air or the same surface. What seems to us like a single smell may contain layers the cat can sort into meaning. That distinction matters because it changes what scent is. For humans, smell often stays close to mood and memory. It reminds us of places, meals, seasons, people, or comfort. For a cat, scent also does those things, but it goes further into structure. It can identify. It can separate familiar from unfamiliar. It can reveal whether another animal has been nearby, whether a signal is fresh or fading, whether a path is worth checking again, and whether a place belongs within the stable known world of the cat or outside it. In that way, the cat is not merely smelling, it is reading. And what it is reading is not always something we can name in the ordinary way. A cat may detect categories of information that do not rise into human awareness as distinct experiences at all. One animal may be recognized not just as cat, but as this specific animal recently here, moving from this direction, carrying this state. A person may be identified not just as human, but as this human who belongs to this room, touched this blanket, and passed through this doorway not long ago. Even stress, health changes, food traces, and environmental shifts may leave chemical clues that a cat can treat as meaningful long before a human sees anything unusual. This gives the room another kind of depth. The blanket is not just soft, it is full of identity. The hallway is not just a passage, it carries traffic. The doorway is not just open or closed, it is a border where outside chemistry meets inside chemistry. The cat moves through this layered world with a sensory literacy we do not share. That is why a cat may return to the same point again and again, or become intensely interested in some invisible patch of floor or edge of furniture that looks completely unimportant to us. The place is speaking in chemicals, and because the vomeronasal organ is especially involved in social and animal-related signals, it helps make scent deeply relational. A cat is not only reading the room as a place, it is reading the room as a network of beings. Who has been here? Who belongs here? Who passed through? Who left a trace worth checking? The house becomes not just a setting, but a record of contact. That record is always changing. New traces arrive, old ones fade. Familiar ones are renewed by repeated routines. So the cat does not simply live inside a fixed scent world. It lives inside one that is constantly being updated, almost like a silent stream of information written across surfaces and carried lightly in air. The nose and the vomeronasal organ together allow the cat to pull different kinds of meaning from that stream. Once you begin to see it that way, the cat's behavior becomes much easier to understand. The long sniff at the bag by the door, the careful inspection of a shoe, the odd open-mouthed pause after smelling a corner, the return to a place another animal touched. None of it is empty habit. It is analysis. It is categorizing. It is the body taking an invisible world and sorting it into knowledge. And once scent becomes readable information, the next question is why cats work so hard to leave their own signals behind. That is where the cat begins to change the room in return. If scent can be read, then scent can also be placed. A cat is not only taking in chemical information from the world around it, it is quietly adding its own. Cats have scent glands around the face and in other parts of the body, which means that rubbing against an object is often more than a gesture of affection or habit. It can be a way of depositing familiar chemical signals onto surfaces, edges, and pathways. The corner of a table, the side of a doorway, the leg of a chair, the arm of a sofa, even the body of a trusted person can become part of this quiet exchange. From the outside, the movement can look simple. A cat passes by and presses the cheek against a corner. It weaves lightly around a leg. It rubs the side of the face against a hand, a bag, a box, or a blanket. But inside the sensory world of the cat, something more lasting may be happening. The object is being folded into familiarity. It is being marked with a scent that says, in effect, "This belongs within the known shape of my world." That does not mean every act of marking is a hard declaration of territory in the dramatic sense people often imagine. Marking is not always aggression. It is not always challenge. Very often, it seems to be something softer and steadier. Reassurance, routine, orientation, environmental stabilization. A room feels easier to live in when it smells the way it is supposed to smell. A familiar person becomes even more securely familiar when their clothing, hands, or chair carry the cat's own trace back to it. A recently changed object may become less uncertain once it has been rubbed, smelled, and brought into the established chemical order of the home. This helps explain why cats revisit the same places so often. A doorway is not only a useful passage, it is a border between one space and another. A corner is not only a shape in the room, it is a stable point where scent can collect and be refreshed. The arm of a couch is not only a place to rest, it is part of a repeated route, a contact point, a place where the cat can check whether the room still carries the expected pattern of itself. Repetition, in this sense, is not empty. It is maintenance. There is something almost architectural about it. Human beings make a home visible through arrangement. We place objects where we want them, choose colors, adjust light, hang pictures, close curtains, and organize rooms so that the space reflects our sense of order. A cat, by contrast, may build part of its sense of home through chemistry. The edges matter, the paths matter, the points of contact matter. The home is not just seen, it is written into. And once a place has been written into in that way, it can become more predictable. That predictability matters because so much of a cat's comfort depends on environmental stability. The world is easier to trust when it smells continuous with itself. A favorite sleeping place smells like rest, body warmth, and repeated return. A feeding area smells like known routine. The path through the hall smells like traffic that belongs. The door frame smells like passage between safe spaces. Even a person may smell more settled to the cat after being rubbed against and quietly marked. This is one reason a disruption in the house can feel large to a cat, even when it seems small to us. New furniture, unfamiliar visitors, moved objects, bags from outside, another animal at the door. All of these may disturb the chemical balance of a space. The cat may respond by sniffing, rubbing, circling back, and revisiting the altered places again and again. It is not necessarily confusion in the human sense. It may be an attempt to restore continuity, to pull the unfamiliar back into the familiar by layering it with the cat's own signals. So when a cat rubs repeatedly on corners, furniture, doorways, or people, it may be participating in a quiet form of world-making. It is helping shape the room into something that feels legible and safe. The gesture can look affectionate, and sometimes it surely is woven with affection. But it can also be practical in a deeply feline way. The cat is strengthening the outline of the known world. That means home, from the cat's point of view, is never just a place recognized by sight. It is a place that has been revisited, checked, refreshed, and chemically anchored. A home is where the scent record keeps returning to itself. A home is where the cat's own trace meets the traces of familiar people, familiar routes, and familiar objects in stable patterns over time. The visual room and the chemical room begin to overlap until the place feels fully inhabited. And yet, even this is not the whole story of how a cat reads what is close at hand. Scent can tell the cat that a place is familiar, occupied, safe, altered, or recently used. It can tell the story of who has passed through. But scent does not always describe the immediate, physical shape of a surface, a gap, an edge, or the nearby movement of air around the face. For that, the cat carries something else, something so familiar that people often forget it is part of the sensory system at all. But scent is not the only way cats read the immediate shape of space, because their faces carry another sensory tool entirely. Those tools are the whiskers, though even the word can make them sound simpler than they really are. To human eyes, whiskers can seem like an expressive detail, part of the familiar face of a cat, something charming, fine, and decorative. But they are not decorative at all. They are highly specialized hairs, thicker and stiffer than ordinary fur, and they are rooted deep in tissue rich with nerve endings. That deep connection is what makes them so important. The whisker itself does not have feeling in the way skin does, but when it bends, shifts, brushes, or vibrates, the tissues at its base detect that change with remarkable sensitivity. This makes a whisker less like a strand of hair and more like a lever for touch. Ordinary fur can tell the body about broad contact, warmth, and general surface feeling. Whiskers are more exact. They help a cat detect direct touch, but they also seem to help it register the presence of nearby objects before full contact happens. A wall does not always have to be bumped into. A narrow gap does not always have to be entered fully. A subtle shift in air near an edge, a light brush against the tip, a tiny bend caused by proximity, all of this can begin to speak to the cat before the body commits. That matters because much of a cat's life happens close to things. Not far out in open space, but near the floor, near furniture, near ledges, near openings, near corners, near the moving edges of the world. A cat passes along table legs, beneath chairs, through gaps, around boxes, between cushions, under beds, beside walls. The space around the face is constantly changing, and the whiskers help turn that close-range zone into something readable. This is one reason whiskers are so carefully placed. The long whiskers along the muzzle are the most obvious, but cats also have whiskers in other places, including above the eyes and on the backs of the front legs. Together, these different sets help gather information about the immediate environment. The whiskers over the eyes can help with things approaching near the face. The whiskers on the legs can contribute to awareness during movement and contact near the front of the body. The whole arrangement suggests a system designed not for distant scenery, but for near-field perception. That phrase matters. Near-field perception is a different task from ordinary seeing. It is not about admiring the shape of the whole room. It is about what is close enough to matter right now. The edge of the opening, the nearness of the wall, the exact point where the body passes from clear space into tight space. The whiskers help define that invisible border around the cat, the zone where caution, adjustment, and precision become most important. And because whiskers are sensitive to bending and subtle environmental change, they give the cat something vision alone cannot always provide. In dim light, in clutter, in awkward angles, or when approaching something from the side, the whiskers help continue the work of reading space. They do not replace the eyes, ears, or nose. They join them. The cat is not seeing with the whiskers in a literal sense, but the whiskers contribute their own kind of knowledge. They help answer questions like how close, how narrow, how immediate, how near the face, how near the body. This is why damage or stress to whiskers can matter so much. If they were only facial decoration, losing one or two would mean very little. But because they are tied into the cat's sensory system, they matter in a more functional way. They are part of how the animal organizes movement and contact in the close world around it. A cat does not simply wear whiskers, it uses them. There is something elegant in that design. Earlier, we saw how cats make use of light, motion, and sound in ways shaped by hunting and caution. The whiskers fit that same pattern perfectly. They are quiet, local, precise, and practical. They gather information without noise. They require almost no effort beyond ordinary movement. They help the cat understand the shape of what is immediately ahead, beside, or just barely touching the edge of its path. That is exactly the kind of information a small hunter would benefit from. So the whiskers are best understood not as ornament, but as part of a sensory array. They extend the cat's awareness into the thin space just beyond direct contact. They help the face become an instrument for reading the immediate environment. And once you begin to see them that way, another part of cat movement becomes much easier to understand. A cat does not always enter a space blindly and then discover whether it fits. Very often, it begins measuring first, using the face itself as part of the test. And once whiskers are understood as sensing tools, the next step is to see how they let a cat measure space before the body fully enters it. That is part of why a cat can seem so deliberate when approaching a tight space. From the outside, it may look like a pause so brief it hardly counts at all. The head angles forward, the body slows, the whiskers shift. Then, almost without effort, the cat either moves through or turns away. What looks like confidence is often measurement. The cat is not just staring at the opening, it is reading it. Whiskers help cats judge openings in a way that is very different from human judgment. A person may look at a gap and estimate with the eyes alone whether the body can pass through. A cat often appears to do something more immediate. It brings the face near the opening, lets the whiskers sample the width and edges, and gathers information from the space before the shoulders and torso fully enter. The face becomes a kind of first scout, moving into uncertainty before the rest of the body commits. That matters because many of the spaces cats use are narrow, low, or cluttered. The underside of a bed, the space between chair legs, the gap beside a cabinet, the opening behind a curtain, the path along a shelf, the narrow place between boxes. All of these ask a simple question. Can the body move through here cleanly and safely? The whiskers help answer that question before the answer becomes physical in a harsher way. This is especially useful in dim light. When the room is not fully bright, sight becomes less exact at close range, especially around edges and small margins. The whiskers help continue the reading of space where vision becomes less reliable or less efficient. They do not replace sight, but they reduce the need to depend on sight alone. A cat moving through a darkened room, around furniture, or under low objects is not working from eyesight only. It is combining visual hints with tactile and near-field information gathered through the face. There is a calm kind of intelligence in that. The whiskers do not need a full collision to be useful. A light brush, a slight bend, a small change in air near a surface can begin to tell the cat something about what is there. A wall close to the face, an edge just ahead, an uneven opening, a hanging cloth. All of these may shape the whisker signal before the body ever fully touches them. The cat begins to sense form, margin, and nearness as a living outline around the head. This is why the whiskers are often angled forward when the cat becomes especially interested in something. The face is gathering more. The body is preparing for action, caution, or closer investigation. In those moments, the whiskers are not passive. They are being positioned for better reading, much as the ears swivel for better sound and the pupils widen for different light. The cat's sensory systems keep adjusting themselves toward the problem at hand, and that problem is often not grand. It is local. The exact width of a gap, the nearness of a surface, the point where one object ends and open space begins. A cat approaching a new opening is often not just deciding whether the head fits. It is sampling size, margin, and proximity with the face itself. It is collecting enough information to predict what the next few inches of movement will feel like. That prediction matters because cats do not simply want to fit. They want to pass through with control. A workable opening is not only one that technically allows the body through. It is one that allows the body through cleanly, quietly, and without getting caught, scraped, or surprised. The whiskers help protect that smoothness. They give the cat a way to refine the movement before the movement fully begins. This also helps explain why cats can be so graceful in cluttered places. A tabletop with objects on it, a shelf with narrow margins, a room with bags and shoes and folded fabrics. All of this can be crossed with surprising precision. The cat is not blindly threading its way through by instinct alone. It is gathering local information constantly, using the whiskers to help keep the immediate world organized. Every narrow passage becomes more readable, and when a space does not feel right, the whiskers can help stop the movement early. A cat may hesitate, pull back, or choose another path. Not because it is timid, but because the information at the face says the margin is poor or the path is awkward. That small pause is not indecision. It is feedback. It is the body respecting what the sensory tools have found. By now, the room has become very rich indeed. Light gives outlines and movement. Sound gives direction and hidden events. Scent gives history and identity. Whiskers give close shape, edge, and passage. The cat does not need any one sense to do all the work alone. Each one takes hold where it is strongest. And once the face has helped the body judge the gap, the next part of the reading begins at ground level, where texture, pressure, and vibration start to matter. The paws continue that conversation with the room in a quieter, lower way. Once the face has sampled the gap and the whiskers have traced the edges of what lies ahead, the paws begin to confirm the path. They do not just carry the body forward, They test, they judge, they report back. To us, a flaw may seem simple, almost beneath notice. We step on it and move on. But to a cat, the surface underfoot is full of information. A cat's paws are sensitive to texture, pressure, and stability. That sensitivity helps answer very practical questions. Is the surface firm or loose? Smooth or rough? Warm or cool? Slippery or secure? Quiet or noisy? Does it shift under weight? Does it hold? Can the next step be placed with confidence, or does the body need to slow down and test again? All of that matters if the animal depends on controlled movement and quick adjustment. This is one reason cats often place their feet so carefully. What looks graceful is also deliberate. A paw does not simply land anywhere and hope for the best. It lands where the body expects support, and if the support feels different than expected, the cat can adjust almost at once. That could mean changing pressure, shifting direction, lowering the body, or pausing for a moment before taking the next step. The response is so quick that it can look effortless, but the effort is really happening through sensation and timing. It also helps explain why cats can move so quietly. A sensitive paw is not just useful for safety, it is useful for silence. If the cat can feel how a surface responds under weight, it can place the body in a way that reduces noise and instability. That matters for hunting, but it also matters for ordinary movement through the house. A cat stepping across wood, fabric, tile, paper, or a narrow ledge is not treating all of those surfaces as the same kind of ground. Each one carries a different feel, a different amount of grip, a different promise of sound or slip. And so, a floor is never only a floor. Carpet holds one meaning. It is soft, quiet, and forgiving. Wood holds another. It may be smooth, slightly cool, and more likely to reveal movement with sound. Stone carries its own kind of firmness. Fabric draped over furniture changes the footing again. A blanket bunched on a bed is not the same as the flat floor. A stack of papers is not the same as a shelf. An unstable edge is not the same as a broad, safe surface. The cat's body knows this through the paws before any person would think to name it. That constant reading helps with caution too. Cats are famous for stepping onto something once, then drawing back if it does not feel right. A loose object, a shifting surface, a slick patch, a crinkling bag. These can all produce small moments of testing. The cat is not being dramatic. It is gathering local truth. The surface is being judged for trustworthiness, and the paws are leading that judgment. There is another layer here that is easier to miss because it is quieter still. Paws may also help cats detect low-level vibration. A small movement in the environment can travel through a surface before it becomes visible. The faint activity of prey, the subtle shake of an unstable object, the low disturbance of something moving nearby. All of this may reach the cat through contact with the ground or the surface beneath it. The body is not only standing on the world, it is listening through it in a tactile way. That possibility fits beautifully with everything else we have seen. The cat does not rely on one grand sense to explain the room. It gathers many partial truths from many channels. Sound reveals hidden events in the air. Scent reveals history. Whiskers reveal shape and nearness. The paws reveal texture, support, and disturbance from below. A surface that seems lifeless to us may carry small messages upward through pressure and vibration. This helps make sense of those moments when a cat pauses, with one paw lifted slightly, as if holding the next step in reserve. The body is deciding. The surface ahead is still under review. Or perhaps the cat has felt something faint and is waiting for a second signal before committing. Either way, the paws are not passive. They are participating in the reading of the place. And because they are always participating, movement stays flexible. If the surface changes, the cat can change with it. If the footing is poor, the body can lower. If the grip is better than expected, the movement can become quicker and smoother. The paws help make the cat adaptable from one surface to the next, one moment to the next, one room to the next. They are part of what makes the whole animal seem so composed, even in unfamiliar or changing environments. But touch alone cannot explain that composure completely. A cat may know what the surface feels like, how much pressure it can take, and whether it is shifting underfoot. But moving well across the world requires something deeper and more constant than contact. Beneath every careful step, every turn, every climb, every quiet landing, another system is working without drawing attention to itself. But to move well across all those surfaces, a cat needs more than touch alone, because balance is running quietly underneath everything. That quiet system sits deep inside the inner ear. It is called the vestibular system, and it helps the cat track head movement, body position, and orientation in space. While the eyes show what is out in front and the paws report what is underfoot, the vestibular system is doing something less visible, and in some ways even more constant. It is helping answer a simple question over and over again. Where is the body in relation to up, down, turning, falling, and stillness? This matters in nearly every movement a cat makes. Walking across a room may look simple, but even an ordinary step contains small shifts of weight and posture. Climbing onto the back of a chair asks for something more. Turning sharply on a narrow surface asks for more again. The cat has to know not only what it is touching, but how the whole body is moving through space as it touches it. The vestibular system helps supply that knowledge from within. Inside the inner ear are tiny structures filled with fluid and lined with sensitive cells. As the head moves, the fluid shifts. That movement bends the sensing cells, and the body receives information about acceleration, tilt, rotation, and direction. It happens fast and constantly beneath awareness, feeding the nervous system with updates. The cat does not have to stop and think about whether the head is rising, whether the body is leaning, or whether a turn is sharp or gentle. The information is already arriving. That is one reason cats can move with such apparent ease. What looks graceful from the outside depends on continuous hidden correction. The head tips a little, the muscles answer. The body leans, the spine adjusts. The footing changes, the limbs redistribute weight. None of this needs to become dramatic because the updates are happening all the time. Grace, in this case, is not magic. It is constant adjustment made to look effortless. This hidden guidance is especially important when movement becomes less stable. A cat stepping onto a narrow railing, crossing the back of a couch, climbing upward, or twisting mid-motion is dealing with more than the surface itself. It is dealing with changing orientation. The body must know where it is in relation to gravity, even while the position is shifting. The vestibular system helps keep that relationship clear. It helps the cat remain organized while the world around it changes angle. That becomes even more striking when a cat is suddenly disturbed. If the footing slips, if the body lands awkwardly, if the jump is misjudged, the response is often extremely fast. The correction may happen so smoothly that we barely notice there was a problem. But that quick recovery depends on the same internal system. The body receives new information about spin, tilt, and acceleration, and then responds before disorder has time to spread very far. This is also where the famous writing reflex begins to make sense. People often speak of it as though cats have some mysterious gift that lets them always land on their feet. The truth is more interesting and a little more precise. Cats have a strong ability to reorient the body during a fall, and that ability depends on rapid internal sensing, flexible movement, and coordinated correction. The vestibular system helps the cat recognize which way is down and how the body is turning. Then the head, spine, and limbs work together to rotate the body toward a safer landing position. But that ability has limits. It is not a promise of perfect safety. A cat still needs enough time and space for the body to organize the movement. Height, angle, speed, health, and the surface below all matter. The writing reflex is real, but it is not magic protection from all falls. It is a powerful example of how quickly the cat's body can update itself in motion. And perhaps that is what makes the cat's movement so impressive. The animal is not simply elegant when nothing goes wrong. It is elegant because it is constantly preventing small wrongness from becoming large wrongness. Tiny shifts of tilt, speed, and posture are being caught and corrected almost as soon as they appear. The room may feel still to us, but inside the cat, position is being tracked from moment to moment. This means balance is not just a talent for standing. It is a full hidden guidance system, active during walking, turning, climbing, crouching, jumping, and recovery. It works with the eyes, with the paws, with the muscles, and with the spine, helping the cat keep the body coherent through motion. Once you begin to imagine that quiet stream of internal updates, many familiar things look different. The cat on the narrow ledge, the cat turning in mid-air, the cat landing softly after a jump. The confidence is no longer mysterious. It is supported. And once balance is understood as a hidden guidance system, the cat's confidence with height and landing becomes much easier to explain. That confidence with height begins to look less like daring and more like preparation. A jump is never only a jump for a cat. Before the body leaves the ground, several systems are already working together. The eyes judge distance and edge. The whiskers help read the nearby margins. The paws test the surface that will launch the body forward. The vestibular system is already tracking position and readiness. Even the posture of the body begins to gather itself around the coming movement. What looks sudden from the outside is usually built on a quiet moment of measurement first. This is one reason cats often pause before they leap. The pause is not wasted time. It is part of the action. The body is aligning itself with the problem. How far is the landing place? How narrow is it? How stable does it appear? Is there enough space to land cleanly and continue? Is the surface above, below, or level with the body? Those questions are being answered not by one sense alone, but by several at once. The jump begins before the paws ever leave the surface. And once the leap starts, body control takes over in a very refined way. A cat's spine is flexible, and that flexibility helps the whole body lengthen, shorten, curve, and adjust during movement. The limbs are coordinated in a way that allows both power and control. The front of the body may prepare for contact, while the rest of the body is still traveling. The back legs, the spine, the shoulders, and the head all help guide the movement into something more precise than a simple launch and fall. Landing depends on the same coordination. The cat does not just drop onto a surface and hope the body sorts itself out afterward. Posture changes before impact. The limbs prepare to absorb force. The spine helps soften the transfer of energy. The body lowers and yields where it needs to, rather than staying rigid. That is part of why a cat can land in a way that looks so quiet. The force is not allowed to strike the body all at once. It is distributed, absorbed, and controlled. This does not mean cats are perfectly accurate every time. They can misjudge. They can slip. They can leap toward unstable surfaces or make decisions that look overconfident. Their movement is impressive, but it is not magical. That matters because it keeps the elegance real. What cats have is not flawless motion. What they have is a body unusually well adapted for height changes, short leaps, quick repositioning, and recovery when small errors happen. The design is practical, not perfect. It also changes the meaning of vertical space. To human beings, height often feels separate from ordinary movement. We move mostly across floors. Chairs, shelves, counters, windowsills, and narrow ledges may feel like special places, not routine pathways. For a cat, those levels can be part of the everyday map. Up is not just above. Up can be a route, a lookout, a resting place, an escape, a safer line of movement, or simply another version of the room. That is why a cat can seem to live in a larger house than we do, even while sharing the same walls. We move through the horizontal plan of the home. The cat may move through that same plan plus the backs of couches, the tops of shelves, the edges of tables, the arms of chairs, the spaces beneath beds, and the narrow transitions between them. Height expands the room. It creates layers. A quiet living room can become a series of platforms, crossings, hiding places, and perches, all linked by the cat's ability to judge and use them. And because the cat's body is built to handle those layers, the movement between them can become calm and ordinary. The jump to the windowsill is not necessarily dramatic. The landing on the chair back is not necessarily risky in the cat's own experience. These are not separate tricks. They are part of how the cat travels. Height is woven into normal motion. When you put all of this together, the cat begins to look less like an animal performing graceful acts and more like an animal living inside a space that has more dimensions of use than ours does. The room is not only wider and deeper, it is also higher, narrower, more layered, more connected by edges and surfaces that the cat can actually trust. Vision, balance, touch, and posture all help turn that layered world into something usable. And once sight, hearing, scent, whiskers, paws, and balance are all in place, the hunting body starts to come together as one system. That system becomes easiest to understand when you imagine not a cat resting in a home, but a cat following the brief possibility of something alive. Hunting is often spoken of as though one special sense explains it all, as if the cat sees better than we do, and everything else follows from that. But the truth is more layered and more elegant. Hunting is not one sense dominating the others. It is a coordinated event. Vision, hearing, posture, whiskers, paws, timing, and balance all begin feeding into the same problem at once. A faint sound may come first. Something small shifts behind a chair, under leaves, inside grass, near a wall, or beneath a cabinet. The ears turn, the head stills, the room narrows. At that stage, the cat may not be looking at a clear object yet. It may only have a location and a possibility. Then vision begins to confirm what hearing suggested. A brief movement appears, a change in shadow, a tiny flick near the floor. The eyes take hold. What began as sound becomes something more exact. But even then, the body does not simply rush forward. Posture changes before movement does. The body lowers, the shoulders gather, the paws begin placing weight more carefully. The spine prepares, the whiskers angle forward. The cat is no longer just receiving information. It is entering a state shaped around information. The whole body becomes quieter, more economical, more precise. This is what makes the hunting body so impressive. The senses are not standing in line, waiting for their turn. They overlap. Hearing may lead, but vision refines. Whiskers begin preparing for closeness before closeness arrives. The paws reduce noise and test support. Balance keeps the body controlled during the slow advance. The eyes continue measuring distance. Each new clue updates the others. The cat does not stop and switch from one mode to another. It keeps integrating. That matters because prey does not stay still for long. A small animal may vanish, stop, reappear, turn, or dart unpredictably. The cat has to remain open to multiple kinds of information at once. If the sound disappears, vision may carry the next moment. If vision is blocked, hearing may keep the path alive. If the body gets close, whiskers and paws begin to matter even more. The system keeps shifting emphasis without ever breaking apart. And perhaps that is why hunting, even in a very quiet form, can look so intense. The cat is not merely watching. It is holding many streams of meaning together. The flick of movement, the angle of approach, the width of the space, the silence of the floor, the likely landing point, the hidden path of escape. All of this may be present in a single still moment. What looks like patience is actually a high form of readiness. You can see traces of this even in play. A toy drags slowly across a rug, a feather moving behind furniture, a small object twitching at the end of a string. These things often reveal the same old structure. The cat may first hear the soft scrape. Then the eyes lock to movement. Then the body lowers. Then the paws become deliberate. The toy may not be alive, but the sensory logic remains. House cats carry the old pattern into harmless situations because the pattern is built deeply into how the body solves sudden, local problems. This is why play can be so revealing. It shows that the cat is not relying on one trick or one especially sharp sense. It shows the coordination itself. A toy that is bright, but still may not matter much. A toy that moves suddenly becomes alive with meaning. A toy that makes a faint sound as it passes behind an object becomes more interesting still. The cat tracks not just what the thing is, but how it behaves in space. Speed matters. Pause matters. Direction matters. Disappearance matters. Reappearance matters. The old hunting body does not vanish just because the setting is soft and safe. It expresses itself through attention, through posture, through the way the senses braid together around motion and possibility. Even a simple game can show how exact that braid is. The cat is reading change, updating position, managing force, measuring margin, and holding the room as a field of opportunity. And once those systems are viewed together, an ordinary house begins to look less like a human home and more like a dense sensory landscape. Once the home is seen that way, it stops feeling like a fixed arrangement of rooms and begins to feel more like a living field of signals. The walls stay where they are. The furniture stays mostly the same. The windows, the doorways, the rugs, the stairs, the chair in the corner, all of it may look settled and familiar to us. But for a cat, the meaning of those places can keep changing from hour to hour, sometimes from moment to moment, because the house is not only made of objects. It is made of movement, scent, sound, height, temperature, softness, passage, and return. A doorway, for example, is never just an opening between one room and another. It is a crossing point. Air passes through it. Scents collect and mix there. People and animals move through it and leave traces behind. Sound enters differently there too, sometimes sharper, sometimes softer, sometimes carrying direction in a more useful way than the open room itself. A cat resting near a doorway may not only be choosing a place to lie down. It may be choosing a place where information naturally gathers. A hallway can mean something similar. To us, a hallway may feel like empty space between rooms. To a cat, it can function like a channel. Footsteps approach through it. Air currents move through it. Familiar people appear there before they enter full view. Sound can travel differently along it, and scent may hold there in layered paths. A cat seated in a hallway may not be sitting in a blank stretch of floor at all. It may be sitting in a route, a place where the shape of the home becomes easier to read. The couch changes too when you imagine it through the cat's senses. It is soft, yes, but softness is only part of the story. It may preserve familiar chemical traces over long periods of time. It may carry body heat. It may offer a raised view of the room. Its back may function as a path. Its underside may function as cover. The blanket on top may smell like one person, while the arm of the couch carries the scent of another. To a cat, that one object can hold comfort, elevation, passage, and memory, all at once. Windows are especially rich in this way. Humans often treat windows as visual things first. They frame a view. They bring in light. They let us look out. For a cat, a window is not just a picture. It is a changing zone of motion detection, light contrast, outdoor sound, and scent input. Birds move there. Shadows pass. Light shifts through the day. Outdoor air leaks in tiny amounts. The room near the window may change temperature. The cat can sit there and receive information from beyond the walls without ever leaving the house. The window turns the outside world into a living edge. That helps explain why cats can return to the same places again and again without seeming bored. The place may not be the same to them each time. The chair by the window at noon is not the same as the chair by the window at dusk. The hallway after someone returns home is not the same hallway it was an hour earlier. The doorway after a bag has been brought in from outside is not the same doorway as before. The house is familiar, but familiarity does not mean sameness. It means the cat knows how to read the changes. Vertical roots matter for the same reason. A shelf, the back of a chair, the top of a table, the windowsill, the edge of a bed. All of these add layers to the home. They create options. They offer distance from the floor, different sight lines, different sound angles, different degrees of safety and control. Hiding spots matter too, not because the cat is always afraid, but because possibility matters. A narrow gap, a shaded space under furniture, a route behind a curtain. These give the home flexibility. The cat is not only asking, "Where can I rest?" It is also asking, "Where can I go? What can I observe? Where can I narrow the world? Where can I pass unseen? Where can I feel held?" Repeated pathways become meaningful in that same way. The route from the bedroom to the hallway, from the hallway to the window, from the couch to the table, from the table to the door. These are not only repeated out of habit. They are repeated because the house has become structured through movement. The cat knows where the surfaces change, where the good pauses are, where the scent is strongest, where the sounds arrive first, where the light falls, where the body can rise lower, hide or watch. The home becomes a root system as much as a resting place. So a house that feels static and known to us may feel dynamically alive to a cat. Not chaotic, but active. Not mysterious without reason, but full of changing sensory value. The same familiar room may keep offering new information because the cat is reading far more than shape and appearance. It is reading what passed through, what shifted, what sounds different, what smells settled, what light now reaches the floor, what path remains open, what path has changed. And after all of that, the final realization is not that cats are mysterious for no reason, but that they are living inside a sensory world shaped by very different priorities. What begins to fall away, once all of this is held together, is the idea that cats are mysterious in some vague, magical sense. They are familiar to us socially. They live in our homes, sleep in our chairs, brush against our legs, wait near the kitchen, and appear so woven into daily life that it can feel as though we know them completely. But perceptually, they remain more foreign than they first appear. The cat we think we know is moving through a version of the world shaped by priorities that do not match our own. We tend to organize life through names, categories, plans, and explanations. We look at a room and call it a bedroom, a hallway, a kitchen, a couch, a window, a doorway. The shape of the place settles quickly in the mind because we know what everything is. A cat does not live inside that kind of order. Its world is built less around naming and more around signal. Change matters. Pattern matters. Nearness matters. Motion matters. Familiar scent matters. repeated roots matter. The room is not only a set of objects. It is a field of conditions, a shifting collection of clues. That difference helps soften so many of the things people find confusing about cats. The pause before entering a room, the intense stare at something we cannot detect, the return to the same corner, the same doorway, the same windowsill, the sudden stillness, the strange interest in a bag, a shoe, a blanket, a shaft of moving light, a sound within the wall, the exact edge of a table, the empty air near a vent. None of this needs to be explained away as irrational or aloof. Much of it becomes more understandable once the sensory trade-offs are clear. The cat is not ignoring the obvious. It is responding to what is obvious inside its own system. That system has given up certain things in order to strengthen others. The cat sees less detail than we do in some conditions, but keeps more use out of dim light. It lives with a narrower color world, but one more responsive to motion and contrast. It hears far beyond our range, but not for beauty alone. It smells not just comfort and memory, but identity and trace. Its whiskers read shape before full contact. Its paws test support and quiet. Its inner ear keeps posture and motion continuously organized. Each compromise serves a purpose. Each strength rises from a specific need. And when those needs are added together, a resting cat no longer looks truly still. The body may be quiet, the eyes may be half closed, the tail may not move at all, yet the animal remains surrounded by information. Light levels are shifting as the sun moves. Air passes under a door. A distant sound lifts faintly through the house. A familiar person crosses another room. The scent on a blanket continues to say who belongs here. The floor holds vibration. The route to the window remains open. The edge of the room carries motion cues that never rise fully into our attention. All of that continues even while the cat appears to be doing nothing. Perhaps that is one reason cats can look so composed. They are not empty when they are still. They are full of a world we only partly share. Their calm is not the absence of input. It is a kind of settled readiness inside a rich field of signals. And their watchfulness is not always tension. Sometimes it is simply what life looks like when an animal is built to remain softly connected to light, sound, scent, touch, posture, and change all at once. There is something humbling in that. The cat lying in plain sight has not left the ordinary world behind. It is in the same room, under the same lamp, beside the same furniture, within the same house. And yet the world arriving around it is arranged differently. What stands out is different. What matters is different. What feels safe, alive, workable, or worth attention is being decided through another set of weights. So the familiar animal remains, in a quiet way, unfamiliar. Not unreachable, not unknowable, just built around another pattern of importance. And maybe that is part of why living with cats can feel so peaceful and so intriguing at once. They make the ordinary room seem deeper. They remind us that the same space can be entered through very different senses, and that a life can look calm from the outside while remaining full of subtle meaning within. And that may be why cats can seem so calm and so watchful at the same time, because the world arriving around them is never quite the same world arriving around us.